Hi, my name is Luna Hamburg, and I'm the AV coordinator here at Springfield UU. And I'm here to introduce Dr. Martinez, Dr. Judith Martinez. Dr. Blanca Judith Martinez Diaz is from Monterrey, Mexico. She has a law degree from La Universidad Autónoma de Nuevo León. Dr. Martinez earned a Master's of the Arts in Teaching from Missouri State University and holds a PhD in Comparative Literature and Cultural Studies from the University of Arkansas, with an emphasis in the Hispanic Studies interdisciplinary track. Dr. Martinez has been teaching Spanish at Missouri State University since fall of 2002, where part of her charge included the development of the Hispanic Initiative Program, HIP, for the College of Education. She was my advisor for my Spanish degree, and I've taken several of her classes during my time at MSU. Although I would say most of the professors I've had at MSU genuinely care about their students and want them to succeed, it's different with Dr. Martinez. She knew my potential and saw that I wasn't living up to it fully. And every time I met with her, she told me I was so smart and so capable and that I was going to change the world. But I couldn't do that if I didn't start working harder. It was a little intimidating, but it was also beneficial to be held to that standard. She helped me a lot during my time as a student. She is, as she once described, my psychology advisor to me on the level. She's serious about social justice and demanding action for marginalized groups. She helps her students to see the injustice in the world, especially regarding racism. And I know that some of these students would not have recognized that it was even happening in the world if not for her. I know she'll have some very insightful things to say, and she won't mince her words trying to make it more palatable. I hope you enjoy her message titled Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in Higher Education.
Thank you, Luna. I feel like a celebrity now. Can I share screen?
Yeah, let me make you a co-host so you can do that.
Thank you. Can you see my screen?
Not yet. There, now we can see it.
Okay, and I usually tell my students that I have PowerPoints for me because I'm an educator, I like to talk. So then I'll start talking and talking. So in order for me to keep track of what I'm saying, I like to have a PowerPoint to show you. So very nice to meet you. I am very, very honored to be here. My name is Judith Martinez. My full name is Blanca Judith Martinez Diaz. I go by Judith. My pronouns are she, hers, and ella, of course, in Spanish. And I understand the topic for this Sunday is liberation. I also want to say that I was very, very honored to be invited to a church. I'm always invited to talk at university conferences, but I've never been invited to talk to a church. So this was very honoring because I do want to say that my great, so 5 generations before me, my great something father was a pastor, and he founded the first Hispanic church in America. So I am very proud of that on my dad's side, and you can see the when we're there with this picture. And then on my mom's side, my grandfather was also a minister, and he passed away when he was 98. So he was the eldest pastor in Mexico, and so I am very honored to have those roots. And at the same time, I feel the pressure now because this is I'm speaking to a church. So I was telling Michelle, is this a new calling, or is this a new path? So I'm just excited, and I wanna share that with you. And then the next picture I have there is of Luna, because I am very honored that when I found out that she was going to be here, and then she was going to introduce me. So I'm in a way seeing this as my former generations, and then doing whatever it is that I'm doing, hoping to have a benefit in newer generations such as herself. So what I'm hoping is, like I just introduced myself, and please unmute anytime. I realized when I joined that everybody was sharing and talking and the community. So please just unmute if you have any questions, and I'm fine with that. I know with technology right now and Zooming and everything, it's a different dynamic. Please unmute anytime you need to talk, or you can also type questions in the chat, and I'm sure Luna can be prompting me to answer anything. I will go over a little bit of etymology. Maybe you've already gone over this, so we'll just think of this as a review if you have, and then I'll talk about the higher education update. I'm hoping they told me to talk about 15 minutes and then question and answers. So I'm hoping to stick to I promise to stick to the time. So I am from Monterrey, Mexico. I always like to have a picture there of my city because when I first moved here, a lot of people asked me if we had Walmarts where I was from, or McDonald's or backpacks even, and yes, we do. It's a huge city. I just came back from Mexico last week. I miss it very much. When people ask me where I'm from, I don't know what to say anymore because I have been in Springfield, Missouri 20 years. I've been in Texas 5 years. I've been in Quebec 1 year. So I've been outside my country longer than what I lived when I was there. So then I would consider myself a citizen of the world, I guess. And then, when they told me to talk about liberation, of course, I'm a language teacher and a literature teacher. I started thinking about the roots of the word, right? And when I looked it up, of course, it is an act of setting free. But what I like here is the gerund, the setting, the ing. So it's a state of being. It's a state of being of restraint and confinement. In other words, when I think of ing, it's something that is continuous and it's something that keeps happening. A setting of becoming free, right? It's interesting to me that it doesn't say to become free and it doesn't say to set free, but it's becoming and setting free also. So it's a release from restraint or bondage. So I guess when we're talking, or in my case, when I think of liberation, I think of it as a journey and as a process, but I also think of it as acknowledging our humility and being humble to understand that learning is a continuous journey, and that it doesn't matter what level of education we have, we're never done. Right? I tell my students, I'm sorry to let you know that you're never going to be done. There's always more to learn, regardless of graduation. And then not a slave. So understanding that not being free or not having liberation, it's the understanding of, in a way, being a slave of beliefs, a slave of thinking just in a box, a slave of operating with paradigms that do not serve democracy, justice, equity, or inclusion, right? And then I looked at the etymology in Spanish also, because I'm a language teacher. And it says that the word libre, free, it shares the same root with to grow. So that was very interesting to me, that it's not only to set free, but again, it shares roots in Latin with to grow. So the word libertad, it's a state quality of being. Again, we have an ing, capable to operate without obstacles. So again, it is a process, that it is continuous, and it also, we have to acknowledge that we all have our own biases and that we have obstacles before we enter into this continuous journey. So being free requires, a prerequisite to be free requires being humble. So a slave who has been given freedom, right? The word libre in English is free, which also translates in Spanish into libre, which is something that is a gift. So I think of it also as it has no cost, right? It's a journey that someone gives to you, but it's also something that you take, or you decide to take once we acknowledge that we are not done with the process, and that it is a process. I mean. And then when we think about continuing education and some of the things that are going on at Missouri State University, I want to mention first a few things that are happening that I believe have to do with inclusion and with equity and diversity. A lot of the times we think of diversity and we tend to think only of race and ethnicity besides everything else, such as gender, disability, sexual preferences, socioeconomic status, religion, and so forth. So a lot of my colleagues are doing a lot of things that are very valuable in the university, especially recently. So I wanted to focus on things that I have seen happening recently, a lot more, especially in the past 2 years. And I think with COVID, we have been forced to see, because a lot of the things that were not visible before now are even more visible. Some of the marginalized, underrepresented groups have been struggling a lot more when we are facing this world crisis. So for instance, the Advising Center is very focused now on having intentional workshops for their advisors, where they provide the advisors with opportunities to learn how to address the needs of underrepresented students. And this is not something that is a one-time workshop and then you're done, but they have continuous talks throughout the year. So they focus on our trans students, they focus on international students, they focus on students of colors, they focus on BIPOC students. So then I have been part of some of these panels, and I have also participated as an attendee. And I am very proud that Dr. Hawkins is doing this in the Advising Center to offer tools for the advisors. A lot of the times we feel like we don't know enough about every culture. And again, learning is a journey. And I think the university being able to, or being mindful or intentional about offering this workshop is something that is really important. At the same time, for faculty, the Faculty Center for Research for Teaching and Learning, Dr. Nancy also tries to hold, again, incentives for faculty who want to develop small projects or bigger projects that have to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion being embedded in the curricula of Missouri, of their courses. So for instance, Dr. Kyler, Dr. De La Vega, who are very huge advocates or diversity champions in the university, have developed and gotten grants to embed some of this and develop work for the curriculum to embed this in other classes, not only in the diversity class or not only in the whatever class has to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion, but to make sure that we have syllabus, curriculum, a pathway in different courses where diversity is not an added value, but it is more like a way of teaching and also a way of learning. So creating an inclusive environment, right? The Diversity Center, of course, right now with COVID is very, very active. Especially, I can think of an example. Our students are telling us, for instance, how they're struggling with different platforms since they have to, some of us choose to teach on Zoom, other faculty chooses to teach on Teams, other faculty chooses to teach on WebEx, and so forth. However, our students have to learn or switch in one day from 5 different platforms. Now, the thing is, we have to also think of students who are struggling with accessibility. So if we're now moving and switching online or switching to hybrid, the Disability Center has been key in helping us provide to our students, for instance, students who are visually impaired, who struggle more with Zoom and with PDFs and the like. So they have really been very helpful, especially with COVID, in order to make sure that students who might tend to be even more marginalized now, to make sure that we have inclusion in the classroom. Currently, Dr. Foster, Dr. Anderson have developed Facing Racism, which they have done in the past, and I'm sure you've heard their names before, but right now is mandatory for administration on campus, which is something new, that everybody has to go through the Facing Racism. And Dr. Foster also leads the Diversity Champions, which is, again, for all GEP students, they have to take modules where they learn about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they have a speaker or presenter during these modules who we call a diversity champion, who shares different perspectives. So this is something that started last year, led by Dr. Foster. So these are some things that are going on in the classroom, teaching-wise, but we also have some projects that are university initiatives that I wanted to share with you. For instance, we're proposing a policy change. As Luna said, I'm a lawyer. In Spanish, again, the word for lawyer is abogada, which comes from the word advocate. My students ask me all the time if I miss being a lawyer because I'm in higher education. But to me, being a lawyer is being an advocate. And being an educator is being an advocate. So, when I'm not in the classroom, it's very difficult for me to shut down and stop thinking about students, because I think educators or education in this career, it's really a way of life. So, to me, it's important that we have policy, because a lot of people will not, how do I say this? A lot in a positive way. I guess it is important to recognize people who are doing things right. There, I said it. So then I think if it is in the policy, it will encourage people so what we're proposing is to include way more value in diversity, equity, and inclusion. So for instance, people that get asked to do a lot of this or carry a lot of this work, we're proposing that this is recognized in their dossier. So it's not invisible labor and goes nowhere and just thank you very much, but that is recognized so that they can be promoted, or that they can be acknowledged, so that they can be rewarded as any other thing, because it is labor. And so incentivizing and making sure that everybody understands that this education that some of my colleagues are doing, it's worth it as anything else. Another thing that is new is that we are having, for the first time, a college-wide diversity and inclusion committee. So every college has their diversity committee, and then the chairs of those colleges are part of this university-wide diversity, equity, and inclusion committee. So we're trying to not reinvent the wheel, but more sharing what everybody's doing, sharing resources, again, trying to strengthen each other, support each other. So I think the main goal is to communicate and to strengthen that sense of community among us, and then know what everybody's doing, right? The universe is huge, and sometimes I'm doing something and then my colleague is doing the same, and we're just kind of reinventing the wheel. So we're hoping that with this new university-wide diversity and inclusion huge committee, we can all come together to represent our colleges and share the information of what is going on and help each other in what's in our programs, right? The other thing is community partnerships. We, of course, partner with CFO, SPS, Minorities in Business, Dr. Wes Pratt, of course, does this, and Dr. Juan Meraz, who's in charge of working with schools around Missouri to talk about diversity in the workplace. He also does that on campus, diversity in the workplace. It's been going on for a long time, but now we're including different modules. So 1, 2, and a lot of the schools are reaching out to Missouri State, especially in the rural areas, because they're wanting training for their teachers in diversity in the workplace. So Dr. Meraz is in charge of this. And I think these programs are, in a way, a process for liberation, right? A process for learning, a process for being free and understanding new different perspectives from different groups will give them new tools, mainly to work with students in the classroom, but also with the community and with anybody from an underrepresented background. Now, another program that I have the privilege to run that is also new is the mentoring program for faculty. We have one for faculty, and we also have one for students. This program is called the Bear Bridge program, and I was when I was reading your song at the beginning, I like the that you were talking about bridges. This is a supplemental program. Many colleges already have a mentoring program for new faculty, but this program really intends to strengthen the sense of community in our campus. I believe in because of my culture, I believe in honoring ancestors, and I also believe in opening paths for different generations. So, we're intending that senior faculty will join hands with junior faculty, and we oftentimes think of senior faculty passing on knowledge to junior faculty, and that is part of the program. That because a lot of the times junior faculty, especially from underrepresented backgrounds, will feel, according to research, more isolated or will have more barriers, especially depending on their intersections, will have more barriers when they're trying to get tenure and right after they get their PhD or while they navigate through any job. But higher education has its own life, right? It's its own cosmos, I guess. So we're trying to pass on knowledge, but at the same time, I believe that, and I think of this as an educator with my students, and like Luna was saying, when I think of Luna, for instance, a lot of the times my students, are very gracious and they give me kind words when they tell me how much they learned, and that's very powerful for me. But they don't understand how much they teach me every day when I'm in the classroom. They don't, it's a two-way street at the same time. It's us opening paths for them, but at the same time, it's us listening to their ideas, to their new perspective, and growing up and growing again with our students. And again, here in the Bear Bridge program, walking hand by hand with the junior faculty to hear them and evolve and transform, and then again, meet the needs to make sure that everybody feels included. Not only, right, to be the diverse, so like we have diverse people, but to talk about true inclusion, where people can be heard, where people can be a part of, where people can, feel that they are being that their voice, that they have a voice, right? A lot of the times here in this program, when I'm recruiting for mentors, I have some white male colleagues who tell me, what am I gonna, what are they gonna learn from me? I'm a white male. What am I gonna do? And I think, you're gonna use your power. You're gonna use your power to open paths for somebody else. And I think that part is very important because everybody plays a piece in having everybody feel included. And I was recently in a workshop where they were speaking about privilege being willing to give up. And I that resonates a lot with me, because to me, any privilege that we have, when we want to promote and really have inclusion, we must be willing to give that up so that we can open up new ways for newer generations and for different groups who have not been heard or who do not feel heard. So this is the last program that I wanted to talk about. And also, because like I said, I'm a literature professor, and I think of myself as from the Ozarks. I wanted to share just a quote from Maya Angelou. People will often forget what you did or what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. So that's what I have to share about higher education, specifically in what we're doing in our institution, because to me these programs are part of a process of learning, are part of a process of growing. We still have a lot to do, like everybody else, but this process of growing, learning, acknowledging that we're still not there yet, but that we want to be, is to me liberating. When I proposed the mentoring program to the provost, that was the first time that I was in a meeting with him, he said to me, when you recruit mentors, I want you to recruit people with good hearts. And to me, that was impressive, because he didn't say, I want you to recruit people who've published so many articles, so many books. He said, I want you to recruit people with good hearts. So this is a program that is requiring mind-changing, heart-changing, strengthening community, rather than knowledge for the sake of knowledge. But it's knowledge for the sake of changing, knowledge for the sake of inclusion, knowledge really for the sake of equity, and knowledge for the sake of liberating and setting free and growing together. So I will open it up for questions and answers. I think I'm right on time. And so I'm gonna stop sharing so that I can see your faces. And I would be very, very happy to answer any questions. And I'm sorry about the noise. I got my family here. I always tell my students when I'm teaching, especially faculty, I tell them this is a kid-friendly space. So kid-friendly, partner-friendly, pet-friendly. When we switched to Zoom, I was able to get to know a lot of people in a lot of family members that I didn't know, that I wouldn't have known if we were teaching regularly in the classroom. So when I was teaching, when we switched to Zoom, I always make sure to say that this is a all-friendly environment. So my husband is a chef, and you can hear him cooking. So anyways, please ask me any questions, anything related, unrelated to what I talked about here. I would be more than happy to share anything, answer anything. I always tell my students this is a safe zone and a brave zone. Be brave to ask me a question. You're safe, and I can I'll share anything you have. Just feel free to unmute.
So, Dacia Reed speaking. I just wanted to say I'm very, this is more a comment than a question. I really like that there's an effort towards embedding information into classes. I think that sometimes when we try to learn something standalone, then it stands alone in our learning. But when it is part of something else that we're learning, it becomes part of us in a different way. So I just wanted to, when I heard you say that, I was thinking, yes, that's I think a really important piece of the education for actually just about anything. The more it's embedded as part of an ongoing thing, the more it becomes a part of us without us, learning because we want to learn on purpose is also an important dynamic, but learning as part of a flow is also, I think, really powerful in ways that we don't always recognize.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we tend to see or to talk about diversity as an added thing, like the diversity person, or let's just have a diversity thing, or let's just have the diversity day, right? Rather than it is who we are, right? It should be really a foundation, not an added value that we put to check, just to check. But it should be exactly like you're saying, a part of who we are. So diversity is not teaching one chapter on diversity, but it's how you teach, why you teach it, and how you make your classroom an inclusive, safe space for everybody, right? So I think of teaching with diversity more than the content. I think of the way you teach it. Mm-hmm. I think that's the difference between instruction and educator. An instruction would be the content. An educator is thinking about the how and why we do it. It's about the relationships as well. Thank you. Any other questions? I see somebody talking. Charles, are you talking? And I don't think you're muted. Let me try to unmute you. Luna, can you try to unmute him?
I'll unmute.
There.
What about the problem of a university being an island of diversity in the middle of something that is different than diversity? In other words, is the university a rarefied climate? And then the students will go out of it and find something quite different. It's, of course, what they came from.
Yeah.
Is the university just an unreal thing in our midst?
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna give you a recent experience that I had. I had an alumni that came to visit our university after a few years, and we went for lunch outside the university, a cafe outdoors. A car stopped just to tell us, it just stopped to yell at us, discriminatory stuff, right? She said, let's just brush it off, Dr. Martinez, that's fine, don't worry about me. And then she came for a workshop at Missouri State. We both I came back to teach the workshop. She came back to be in the workshop, expected to be at 100%, right? I think we have, as a community, a lot yet to be done as a country, as a world, right? I don't have an answer to that level of complexity, what I can say is that I always tell my students when they, we start with our community, we start in our small circle, and there's no time for us to be silent, period, in any area. It's not a little thing. It's not brush it off, right? After that, I talked to the chief of diversity inclusion, and I sent him a picture of us just enjoying coffee with a smile, and what had just happened. And I said, you need to understand that we have to also concentrate on recruiting and retaining so that our faculty will stay here and become part of the community who are from diverse backgrounds, so that our staff who are from diverse backgrounds will stay, so that our students will come here and want to stay in Springfield to change the world and the community. Because if we have them here and then they go somewhere else because they don't like Springfield, then we're not going to have that, we want to keep the best. We don't want them to leave. So having the recruitment, retention, and making sure we have these partnerships with the communities, I think is key, so that we can be changing, again, being active in things of the community, because we cannot be silent, such as, I'm a mother of children who attend schools here. So being active there, being active here, being active, being informed of what's going on in the community, so that we don't live in this bubble, right? Because we don't have the privilege to do so, especially if we're advocates. Thank you for that question. I hope I kind of answered.
Yeah, the tendency of scholars is to, their allegiance is somewhere besides the community or where they are. That's the tradition.
Yeah, we want them to stay here.
Has the university done anything to address the biases in tenure and promotion? The mentors, the expectations, the opportunities. When I was teaching at MSU, the senior faculty were mostly white male, and then you had all of the diversity folks in junior positions, kind of a revolving door in and out. They'd be there for 3, 4, 5 years and not get tenure. And so that there was a concentration of power. And then a lot of lip service paid to diversity. But in terms of having a diverse faculty in senior positions, we did not.
Mm-hmm. I see that in higher education as a systemic problem, right, that needs to be addressed. That's why, in my opinion, there's no really, liberation is action, right? It's an action verb, it's an action. I think that's why we're proposing, and it's an ongoing process that I'm hoping that it goes through the Senate this September, a policy change in tenure and promotion practices. So to me, if there's not accountability in policy, it's just lip talk, like you're saying, right? So that's why a group of colleagues and I are proposing that other things will count towards tenure and promotion that have to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion, so that people from underrepresented backgrounds will not have a disadvantage when they're applying in comparison to other faculty who tend to be concentrating the power, so that we can diversify that the positions of tenured. So I think the main thing that is going on to alleviate that issue is the policy change that we're proposing in the faculty handbook. That is the most important document that we have in the university for faculty. So I'm part of that process. It's not an easy process. I think from everything that I have done in my life, that has been the hardest, because it's like changing in the Constitution, pretty much, of what's so. But to me, there has to be accountability, and it has to be in policy, so that then it becomes the norm, so that then it becomes normal, right? So it's not that just the one more person, we have two people of color here, three people, so that's the norm, right? That it's not people struggling all the time, but it's policy change, the faculty handbook proposal that it's going on. Yeah.
Good, that's important work.
I think it is, yeah, it is important, and it's a lot of work.
Roberta is asking, how inclusive is Springfield in your opinion?
I think it depends on where I am, and I don't mean that geographically. I mean that in every sense. I think when we think about diversity, it's very unpredictable. Like I said, I had that experience recently when I was outside campus, but honestly, I have found this a place where people have been kind to me. When they have offered, I had a colleague who asked me, "Why have you been here 19 years? Why?" At that time he was 17, and he said, "Why have you been here 17 years?" And I've had some struggles, especially because I miss my family very much. I'm from a very family-oriented culture. But at the same time, I have found what I now call mentors. People that are there to show me the way, and who have taught me, who have held my hand. And I'm very thankful for that. And, most of those people do not look like me. And they just have, like my provost said, a good heart. So, other people who have not, and, then I don't know. I mean, in Mexico, I struggled a lot because it's a very patriarchal country. So being a female in Mexico is very difficult. So here, I know it's also difficult, but it's not as difficult. So I guess you just, it depends. It depends on where. I don't know how to answer that. Like when you say how inclusive, there have been times where I feel like it's not inclusive, and then I feel like I have friends that I'm part of a community. So I guess it's a process for me too, and I also think of myself as a fighter. So if I'm not included, then I think, okay, let's make it more inclusive for newer generation, and I try to concentrate on that. So when I don't feel it's inclusive, then I try to make it inclusive. So I'm privileged because I work with students. So when I walk into the classroom and you got these kids like Luna, opening their eyes when you're teaching and reading a novel, that's where I belong. So I'm very happy, So that's Springfield for me. I spend most of my time. Just give me a classroom and I'm happy. So